It's loading. Good morning, everyone, our viewers, and those who are going to watch the replay. I am your humble host, Melo Okafor, and today we're going to be talking about nurturing confidence in children. This includes building resilience and self esteem. So, personally, I feel like this is an issue that has been ongoing in many communities and societies. And some people don't know how to handle. Some people don't even know that they have a problem with their self-esteem, or they might not be as confident as their peers. And sometimes they get compared too much to the point that they start to overthink and they start developing terrible habits. So today we're going to be addressing these issues and how we can solve them at home, at school, wherever we find ourselves, teachers, students, parents, and everyone. So to put more light on this, we have Miss KK, an education strategist and the founder of Busy Minds College. Hello, Miss KK. Can we get to know you?
Hello, Melu. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. We're happy to have you here. So, what do you think about this topic? What do you think may be some signs that a child is struggling with low self-esteem or a lack of confidence?
Hmm. First of all, let me say that this is really important topic. It's extremely important because even for us as adults, some of the things that we do, some of the ways that we react is based off of self-esteem issues. And just like you said, the person may not know that they're experiencing self-esteem issues. They just feel, that thing the person said is making me react. But the question is, why are you reacting that way? So directly to your question, how do you know an adult or a child, right, has self-esteem issues? Some of the reasons, some of the ways that you can tell is sometimes negative self-talk. So you would notice that some people would always, I mean, if you look back and think about your friends, or even think about being in a situation where people are expecting you maybe to show up, and you're like, I'm not sure I can do this. Part of it could
Mm-hmm.
be that you're unsure of your own skill set, but part of it could actually stem from negative self-esteem. You just don't feel that you're good enough. You don't feel that you can't do it. So what happens is that the child withdraws, right? And that's why you also see social withdrawal. You go on the playground, this child doesn't want to play on the playground. This child doesn't want to be the first to initiate a conversation. This child is amongst their peers. You might find that this child doesn't want to be the one that has a conversation with anybody. This child just doesn't want to be in that space where they are seen, where they're noticed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are ways that you begin to see self-esteem issues. And before I go on, I know that we do have quite a bit of time. We don't have a lot of time. Something you also see when you talk about self-esteem issues is sometimes you want to be like what's the word, perfect. When you see people who
In the
try,
sense of society.
exactly, you see that they want to try their best to just get it right, get it right, get it right. It's a
Mm-hmm.
self-esteem issue because you want the whole world literally to see that you're this perfect
Mm-hmm.
person, but you may not be that, and it's okay to not be that perfect person. So, I mean, those are some ways that we
A
can see
child may be
self-esteem
showing
issues.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But there are many more.
So
But let's stop here.
we'll just stop there for now.
Okay.
So most of these issues are in like children, those at a young age, because I think that's when their mind is starting to recognize these things and feel like that's how they are meant to be.
That's right.
So why do you think it's important to address these issues earlier on in their years of life?
Hmm. Huh. It's very, very, very important to address it early on so that children don't develop a pattern that begins to play out later in life. If I always feel I have self esteem issues, I'm never going to be that person who at work is one to talk about something that may be really important to me, even to the organization that I've noticed. I would expect somebody else to say it. And that means that I will not be visible at work. I would get passed on for promotion. But even on a regular, let's look at child, teenager, university years, it can affect the child's academic performance. They feel that the reason why they didn't get a question is because they're not good enough to get that question.
Mm-hmm.
Not just that, I'm just learning this concept for the first time. And so when I'm learning it for the first time, I will miss it. But they're never going to see
Definitely,
that they've missed it because they're just learning it. They're going to attribute that to the fact that they're not good enough, which is
but
something
they
that they
can't.
had or they can't. Exactly. So those are reasons. And if you look at that, it's a mental health issue, right? Because if I always feel that somebody's better than me, then I'm always going to be that person who is like that. I'm trying not to be
Mhm.
seen, trying not to be heard. And that's not a great thing, especially when I do have something to say. Another thing that you would notice and why it needs to be addressed is that you would find it's almost like an over dependence on that person who they feel has a voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why you see things like, and it can go both ways, right? There can be an over dependence on this person who, my friend, this person is the real G friend. Let
Mm-hmm. I want to be like them.
exactly this happening person. Also, it could be that that person who is the happening person, the bully, also has self-esteem issues, but they're trying
Mm-hmm.
to hide it. And that just, sort of throws so many things off balance, generally speaking.
And sometimes they might be too busy trying to be someone else that they forget who they are themselves, and then
Ah,
they start to
Melu.
overshadow their own personality. They
Exactly,
totally become someone else, and then they just lose everything.
exactly, exactly.
So, in these kind of situations, what do you think are some strategies or techniques that parents, I mean, you as a parent as well, can use to help boost a child's confidence and self-esteem?
It's very difficult to be prescriptive, right? And when I say prescriptive, that is saying something and assuming every parent can use it, because that is riding on the assumption that every child will experience this in a similar fashion. And that's not the reality. The way my self-esteem was affected when I was younger is different from the way my siblings' self-esteem were affected, or even my friends. However, generally speaking, support is a big deal. When I know I am supported, I am accepted for who I am, regardless of who that person is. I'm more willing, to show myself. Also, having that support system just means that I'm confident enough to know that these people love and care about me. So even if I miss it, they are happy to correct me in a very loving manner. So those are ways that they can help. Another way is really as children, as parents, to help children set realistic expectations, which is why some people would say don't get your children on social media too early, because they begin
Mm-hmm.
to see all these things that are not true.
Social media is like the biggest thing. Like,
I know. But they begin to see those things that are not true, not real. And it's almost like I begin to fashion myself. Like you just said, Melu,
mm-hmm,
right? I begin to take on a persona that is not mine,
mm-hmm.
simply because I've
Other people
grown
are
up.
doing. That's what I'm meant to do. That's
Exactly.
what
Or
it is.
parents saying, when I was your age, this is how I used
Mm-hmm.
to do it. Why
How
are
do you
you
do
now?
before us to get to school?
They're totally unrealistic expectations. I mean, that child and
Mm-hmm.
what they're learning are totally different. So those are ways that we can help. And another way, and I'll wrap up with this one, is independence. Parents feel when you do things for your child, literally ensure that you're doing everything for your child. Because when I was growing up, I didn't have this thing. So let my child
Mm-hmm.
not suffer it. Those sort of things. It kills your child's independence. And what then happens is that child never really knows who they are, because they're always expecting mommy or daddy or auntie or uncle or teacher or anybody to step in for
Mm-hmm.
them. And so when they are in that situation where they need to step in, they're confused. They don't know what to do. And when they mess up, they feel that becomes their persona, that person who always messes up. But it's just because they've never been able to do it themselves. And so they've
Never
never
got the
learned.
chance.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So we talked about parents, but what about school? Because in school, that's where they find their peers. That's when, because the teachers, some teachers, don't even bother about helping the child. I mean, it's not their
Mhm,
child, so it's not their
mhm,
business. And
mhm.
then their peers will now continue adding some pressure. So, what do you think that the education plays? Like, what role do you think it plays in this?
Gosh, I love it. To be honest, right, when parents hand over their children to a school, either for 2 hours, 3 hours, 10 hours, the school literally takes on the persona of parent at that time, right? So the rules that apply for the parent will mostly also apply for the school. What do I mean? In terms of providing a supportive environment for that child, the child needs support, right? The child needs help understanding that you need to have a positive mindset. Yes, you may not know it
Mhm.
now. I shouldn't call you things like olodo, or that's how you're always missing it. I taught you 2 weeks ago, you did not get it. I'm teaching you again now. That is just real. Sorry, but that's just
It's
reinforcing
true. It's true.
the insecurities that this child already carries on the inside of them. We also need to be, as schools, more get in touch with our emotional side, help children develop that emotional independence, emotional abilities within themselves, helping them understand the fact that you're great, you're amazing. However, these are the things that you need to do to get this. So it's almost like you put praise in between put criticism between two layers of praise. It's called the
Mhm.
praise sandwich. There's praise,
Okay.
there's praise, and then the filling is the criticism. And it's
Criticism.
not even
Mhm.
criticism in a sense, it's feedback. We also need, as schools, to give positive feedback. If that child is having issues with comprehension, for example, and so when you ask them a word problem, they will typically not respond to the word problem in the way that they should. Instead of saying that's not right, instead point them in the direction in which their comprehension will
You
be,
can do better.
you can do it better. Yes. So really positive feedback. Your handwriting is not good. What about my handwriting is not good? And what should I do to cause that handwriting to be
To make
good?
it better.
It's also great to have sort of counseling services. So that's why you will notice some schools have like pastoral support, especially in
Mhm.
school boarding houses. So it's great to have
Mhm.
that teacher that you can always go and talk to about things like that. It's like a counseling unit. That's very important in schools. It's also important, depending on the age of the child, of course, to help the children reflect, right? We grow
Mhm.
not because of our experiences, but because we take on the ability to reflect about those experiences and to say to ourselves, what am I going to do differently next time?
Mhm.
So those are things that schools can do. Of course, extracurricular activities I think are also important. Things like maybe debates and press club. Let children be able to find something they're great at. That
Mhm.
bolster the self-confidence, begins to boost their self-confidence, and they're just children are then really able to be themselves because they are able to express themselves within these extracurricular activities. I mean, there are many more, but I can see you twitching like you want to go on to the next question. So, okay,
No. You really know a lot about this topic because the next question I was going to ask you was
Mhm.
about how you can balance praise with constructive feedback, and you really just answered
I
that with
just
a
answered
yes
it.
already. So I don't know what else I'm meant to say, but
So
okay,
the reality, right? Let me speak to that a bit more, Melu, before we go off that. The
okay.
importance of managing feedback, right, is that if you don't manage feedback appropriately, the child is going to feel judged. So you
Mhm.
really need to be able to put in that praise. Every child, regardless of that child, has something they're good at, right? Even if it is
Mhm.
sitting down quietly, right? Keeping their books quietly, drinking water nicely, regardless, there would always be something that that child can be recognized for. And by recognizing that greatness in the child, it helps them able to better swallow the negative feedback, right, that they might be getting,
Mhm.
right? So again, it's almost like you're turning that negative feedback into positivity. Oh, you're so great at
Mhm.
these areas. I see you need to work on it. And when you work on it, it's just going to ensure that you're so much better at this. So that child sees it becomes aspirational, right? It is
Mhm.
no longer this area of myself I need to fix. No, no child needs to have that sort of, I don't know if it's to call.
Like there's something wrong with them.
Exactly, Nelu. No child
Mhm.
should feel that way because even us as adults, we don't like to feel that way. So there should
Mhm.
always be this, you're amazing at this thing. Let's work on this part. And then, oh my goodness, you'll be so much greater. It's not saying that you're not amazing. It's not saying there's something wrong with you.
Mhm.
It's saying, let's do more. And just doing more gets you to that place. And that's something
Continue
that
improving and learning.
exactly. Both schools and home need to have that. It can be a lot of pressure, right? Because at school, you have pressure from parents, really expecting that child
Mhm.
to be the best that it can be, score 100 over 100. But the reality, every child's process is different. And if we lose sight of the fact that every single child is different and really individualized in the way that they approach learning, in the way that they approach life, then we're always going to
Mhm.
try and, like I said, be prescriptive and just try and do a one size fits all when really one size never fits all.
Thank you for that. So now there are different ways that, okay, so you know how you talked about a child, maybe every child is different, how you learn differently, you're on a different journey, you come from a different background, yes. So are there any specific challenges
Mhm.
that children from different ages, age groups, or backgrounds, maybe culture, maybe the way they were brought up, does does this are there any specific challenges that play a role in developing the
Mm.
confidence, or how a child self-esteem would be per se? I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing you asking is the point about nurture and nature.
Yes.
Right? So we're looking at the nurture, which is the environment, and then nature, the way this child is inherently, which is looking at the development stages. And so, yeah, the different challenges that children need to overcome depending on the age, right? Because I mean, I'm sure when you were 2 years old, you were probably just thinking of how to run and grab the remote and hold on to it.
Yes.
Have nobody exactly. Exactly. That was all you literally were probably thinking about at that time, and how to get that cookie without mommy
Mm,
realizing.
how we call on the table, remove the batteries from everything.
Exactly. So I mean, so definitely thinking about things like that, you definitely do have that. And so you need to look at the different developmental stages. And I'm not going to, because this is a school program, I'm just going to break it up into nursery, primary school, and then secondary school. Yes. So let's look
Okay.
at
Yeah.
three. Development in areas that when you look at nursery school, for example, in terms of development and the things that could cause low self-esteem for children is things like potty training, which is toileting needs. When the
Mm-hmm.
parent keeps to say, why are you always doing this? Or in school, that child is always being picked on, maybe because they had an accident.
Mm-hmm.
So those can of course lead to self-esteem issues because that child is going to feel very self-conscious. We might feel that the child is too young to understand in preschool, but they do understand, right? They do know that something has gone wrong. I've not done something in the right way, and they sense
Mm-hmm.
that because children are very intuitive. They read the room, they read the parent, they understand how that person has reacted, and they just
Mm-hmm.
that this thing did it. That's why you would notice that they might be happy, and all of a sudden they just go really
Just
sad.
change.
Yeah, so at that point in time, and it will happen, and I'm just taking that one example. There are many others, but because I want to get through the three stages, I'm going to just focus on that toileting example. For example, when you look at that toileting, the way a parent would react when a child, has a toilet accident or bathroom accident, either they're indoors or outdoors, or how a teacher would react as well, matters a great deal towards that child understanding that this is an accident and I can overcome it. Or that child being so nervous to talk about the fact that they need a toilet break, that they do it on themselves instead of talking about it. Let me use myself as an example. When I was I think I was 5 years old, uh, and this is in primary school. Well, no, I was still in nursery at that time. Back then we used to be
You
5 years.
remember?
I remember, and that's the thing with these negative experiences, right? There's something called core memories for children. We have them as adults as well. A core memory is, and I'm having goosebumps just talking about this because I still remember. I'm going to be 47 in December, and I remember what happened to me 42 years ago. Is it 42 years ago? Where are my math gurus in the house? Well, it's not
Yes,
40.
that's what I see.
Yeah? Did I get it?
Yes, yes. That's literally older than like times two of me. Like, you should have.
Yeah, I remember it. So I had just moved to a new class. It's either I had just moved from nursery to actually I just moved from nursery to primary one, right?
Mhm.
In my primary school at that time, and I wanted to use the toilet. Now in preschool, our toilet breaks are synced, right? We go to toilet maybe every hour. A teacher would ask us, "Who wants to wee wee? Does anybody want to go to the toilet?" We do that, and so we're prompted. But then I moved on to primary school and there was no such prompting. And this teacher was just teaching and teaching and teaching and teaching. And I had been raising my hand and raising my hand because they told us if you want to ask anything, raise your hand.
You have
So
to
I had
raise your hand.
raising my hand and raising my hand. And this teacher just didn't call me, because she was so focused on teaching.
The class teaching.
Yeah, and maybe she just felt this person
You
will
were
get.
disturbing or something, or just one of those. Yeah.
I ran out of that classroom with P dots trailing me, right? I couldn't hold it in. I was 5 and I peed on myself, right, in that classroom. And when I came back, I couldn't even come back to the classroom. One of the janitors met me in the toilet. And so she noticed and she was like, oh, she took off my underwear, washed it for me, squeezed it for me, wiped my legs. I was shaking because I didn't even know what to expect when I went back into the classroom. And I walked into the classroom and she told me to held my hand, wiped my face. I was crying, and she said, don't worry, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. She took me back to the classroom. But guess what? I couldn't even walk in. I stood by the door because I was so anxious, right? And then I walked in. And as soon as I walked in, guess what the teacher said, Nalu?
What?
Guess.
What's wrong with you? Why did you leave my class without permission?
Shame. Yes. And she put me in front of the class and told the entire class to sing that song. There was a song we used to sing it. Something, shame. Say it again. Yes, in front of the entire class. I was so beyond. I wanted to dig the ground and enter into the ground.
The fact that a teacher actually called you to the front for
But you
that.
see, that's where emotional intelligence comes in, right? It's also that teacher was so stressed because right now they're going to have to go and PC for body. How are you? Shame. Exactly. That's my you must have been in my school. So that was the song. And it was so embarrassing that years and years and years later, and like I said, I still remember it. And every time I talk about it, I feel the shame that I felt at that time. So that's for preschoolers, right? So toileting is such a big deal. We do not have, or let me not say we, see, I'm projecting, I'm going back there. They do not have control over themselves at that time. So we need to create supportive environments, have a change of clothing, right? Talk to the child. The child is just transitioning. Manage that transitioning properly so that they know what to expect and how to expect it. Let us not make assumptions. They're children, right? And then we go into primary school. Primary school, things that could cause, and again, I would focus on one thing. In primary school, the assumption is that children should be able to read. But guess what? There's some children who cannot read as much as the other children. Do you get what I mean? Simply because maybe they had a shaky foundation, maybe they are just not able to grasp this whole reading thing. And it's okay. It's okay. Right? You see, I'm seeing some of the chats, some of the comments. Somebody said, Dee Dimowo says that she got whooped for going to break and coming back sweaty. So what does that do for you as a child? You don't want to go and run around at break time, even though you should run around at break time. Right? Because you now begin to think you're lacking confidence in the norm. And that's where self-esteem issues begin to crop up. That's where confidence begins to crop up. Like you said, Melo, at the beginning, you begin to second guess yourself. Are you still here with me, Melu? Okay, so I'm sure Melu would be back. I can see that she got frozen there. So I'm sure she would be back. So we need to look at that. Now, in primary school, for example, what should we be looking at? So just focusing on that example of reading. When you think about a child and reading in primary school, it's almost like they go 5 and 6. As a child in primary school, you should be reading. So what happens when a child cannot read? We should not make a child that cannot read. Yes, I noticed that you got
network.
Yes, no problem. I carried on. I noticed that children in primary school who cannot read could be, cognitive dissonance. They could be made to feel like they're less than their peers. And it really shouldn't be that way. There needs to be some sort of a way to manage, again, that process for that child, to help them get more confident. Otherwise, they're not even going to want to try. Some of the reasons why behavioral issues in students is sometimes the fear of failure. Because I'm afraid to do this thing, because I may fail at it, I just don't do it at all. And I don't do it at all, and so it doesn't get done. And because I know my teacher is going to force me to do it, I would act it out. I would act out. It's the fear of failure that is underlying that behavioral dissonance that you're seeing, or rather, like a cognitive dissonance, so to speak. Because I can't do it cognitively, I act it out, right? So there's a dissonance between my behavior and what I should be doing. And that's what you will begin to see in the primary school level. So again, that is something that we need to guard against. Because if that child grows like that, they're never going to overcome that block in terms of their reading. And that becomes problematic because it can't carry on. The problem is they've put a mental block and said to themselves, I can't do this thing. And once you say to yourself, I can't do this thing, then it's very unlikely that you will be able to do it. You're going to have a growth mindset about things like that. All right. That is something that you want to see. And then let's go on to secondary school now. In secondary school, some of the things that we see is that children begin to become more in tune with their emotions. They're beginning to notice that they're boys or they're girls. They're beginning to notice, things about themselves. There are all sorts of chemical changes that are going on. And so you might begin to see tendencies like somebody wants to like a boy. Somebody wants to like a girl. Little notes that starts getting passed across. Some butterfly feelings. And if that is not managed properly and children are being told, go and sit down, you see this one, yourself wants to have boyfriend, yourself wants to have girlfriend, you're going to have those issues in secondary school, right? Those children are going to grow up feeling like they're not worthy of the relationship. And when people feel like they're worthy of relationships, they will do anything in their power to be worthy of a relationship. So we need to be very careful with our teenagers, our children in secondary school, right? Give them a reason to speak about their feelings, because the reality is that secondary school, when you're going to those teenagers, all sorts of things are going on in the brain, in the body, in the mind of those children. If you want them to feel like they're different, it is okay. It is perfectly normal. Perfectly normal to feel those ways. But if you don't make those children feel that it is normal, then they're going to hide the fact that there's this boy they like, there's this girl they like. They hide it from you, the parent, from you, the teacher, and then you're not able to provide appropriate guidance. And then they might make a mistake, which reinforces the faulty belief that they're not in relationships. And that just goes on and on and on and on and on. And that becomes problematic. And so you see somebody who is not confident, but instead of them to tell you they're not confident in their personality, in themselves, they begin to act out in ways that they shouldn't, right? So those are 3 ways that you would notice such behavioral issues and self-esteem issues playing out. Yeah. Please, if you have any questions, please drop it in the chats. We're going to pick it up from the chat and have that conversation with you here and just talk about it. But please, if there are any questions, please go ahead and drop it in the chats. Yeah. Isam, the educator, says teachers and parents must be aware of yes, they need to be aware. Teachers and parents, it is extremely important that you are aware of the transition process in the students, very aware, or in your children at home. What is this? This child is not always a child, right? They are children, but they are different stages. So they're not always that KKK baby that you feel, I need to protect. Sometimes even us being overprotective of our children creates self-esteem issues, like I mentioned earlier. They cannot do it themselves. They do not believe that they have the ability to do it themselves. And once a child doubts their ability, it's very difficult to get them to undoubt themselves. They just get into that place. They're wondering, can I do this? 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 So being a really positive role model and not being that parent who was always carrying first and who had it all together when they were growing up. You can't have it all together. So let the children be vulnerable with your children. Help them understand things that you weren't able to do as well, right? Give them great examples. Like I just gave you an example of how I weed on myself. I don't think a lot of people would agree that they ever peed on themselves. Definitely not on YouTube. So being vulnerable helps the children understand that, right? That, what, I also went through this when I was younger. This is how I managed it. And this might work for you, and things like that. So somebody's asking that if the child is not responding when being encouraged, what can be? The challenge with that, and I love that question. That's such a fantastic question. Thank you for asking it. The reality is a lot of the time we approach children, we approach problems, we approach challenges the way we would have solved them. So we approach it with a biased perspective. If you approach anything with a biased perspective, you cannot get the right out of it. It's impossible. Because you're projecting what you would have done in that situation. You have forgotten the fact that it is not you. We're looking at a child. that also has their perspective and also has so many things that they're dealing with. So you always have to say to yourself, this is this child. Have a conversation with the child. What are their needs? How can you meet them at their need point based on the conversations you're having with the child? Then you together, you don't prescribe to the child. You come together and agree on definitive way forward, helping the child even make those decisions, guiding them towards that place. That is how you get a buy-in. Otherwise, you're already setting up that entire system of help, of support to fail because you haven't brought the child into the picture. Who is this child? What are the sort of things that they want, right? What are their needs? You must be able to answer those questions. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem. You're just going to have it because that child would always rebel against what you're forcing them to do because they're already at a stage where they're feeling really pretty adultish, so you don't want that to happen. All right, so I see another question. Fantastic question again. Isom, the educator, says, how do we undo our negative impact on our children's self-esteem needs? So the first thing is, who is the child? What are the self-esteem needs of this child? What is it that this child needs, right? Does this child need a positive role model? Does this child need you to connect real-world experiences for them? What is it that this child needs? Once you are able to adequately see the child, you can, from that point of view, begin to almost like you can sense the error in your ways, right? In terms of the things that we have said to the child to reinforce their negative self-belief, to reinforce their feelings of inadequacy, and then we can begin to change it. It's not okay to just suddenly begin to talk positive to the child, right? There might be deep-rooted issues that you need to uproot first of all, but it comes from having that conversation with the child. I mean, some ways really is in schools, you can have individualized lesson plans. You can create inclusive education strategies for the children. I've talked about creating areas where the child can feel like they're good at it. So things like your programs, your extracurricular programs, those are ways that we can begin to undo the negative self-impact, right? But first of all, what is the negativity that we are noticing? Melu, I'm just looking at the questions now that are in.
My network has been something else, but thank you for carrying on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melu. Thank you. Yeah, so those are things that you want to look at. What are the things that you can see in that child? You might not even be able to say, oh, this is what I said to the child that makes the child feel like they were negative. When you say things like, oh, Lord, are you okay? Are you okay? That child is going to go back and going to be like, am I okay? What does okay mean? So I'm not okay. They will just go and be thinking about it, right? Because you can control what you say, but you cannot control how people react to the things that you say, right? So that's the thing that we always need to remember. Always be cautious. From here on, change your perspective. From here on, change the way you think. Let me give you an example. One of my children had so she's in the university, and her friends, they didn't do well, right? So she, thank God, did well, and she's crossed off into year 2 right now in her university. But a lot of her friends, a lot of her classmates, they didn't. Some of them were asked to withdraw from the university. Some of them had to go and look for other schools, right? And I remember back then, her dad and I were very worried because we were like, she's studying enough. She's studying enough. So now that situation, I could have said, share you see now. Share you see. When we tell you put your read, you will say you went to the library. How can you be going to the library with your friends all the time? What I'm doing is alienating that child. That child will never tell me when they're going, right? Never. Because they're going to feel judged with the information they've given me when I use it again later. What we did instead was I sat down and talked with her. So how are your friends feeling? How are you feeling about it? Do you feel like out of all your friends, you're the only one that passed into year 2, how are you feeling? We had that conversation with her. And then I told her, I said, look, even though I'm really sad about what has happened, but do you maybe see that this is like a wake-up call, helping you understand the fact that university is not the same as secondary school. Year 1, year 2, they're all different. There are things that you need to do. And she arrived at those answers herself. We're supposed to be going out somewhere tomorrow, and she said to me, Mommy, I can't go. I need to study. And I'm like, school only started 3 weeks ago. We can go. Let's go and go out, Joe. Do you understand? But I didn't arrive at those conclusions. And she said to me, no, mommy, I have a schedule. The schedule, there's certain hours that I have to study. And if I take that time, and I said, take it out. You will not fail. Let's go. Do you understand what I mean? I could have handled that totally differently. Right. And I would have been, because I know how much we're paying for school fees. Right. That's what, you know, school fees. And then you failed. You're, you're alienating that child. And that is not positive at all. Does it mean that you cannot make mistakes? You will. I do. But again, be vulnerable enough to say, I'm sorry about the way I talked to you. This is how I was feeling at that time. Sorry if it really hurt you. And that's okay. And those children appreciate it when a parent can say sorry. Now when I tell my children sorry, they now come and they come and hug me. You know,
I'll
like,
say thank you for the sorry.
what?
I'll say thank you for telling me sorry. She says sorry. I say
Exactly.
thank you.
Exactly. Okay, so there's another question here. Maybe do you want to read that question from D? I don't
Oh
know if
yeah, I've been seeing questions in the comments, and I assume you've already answered some of them. So thank
so
you
I
very
haven't
much.
answered the one from D Demo that says, as parents, how do we manage? Do you want to read that out? Do you want me to take that?
Okay, yes, please. As parents, okay, so Dimo, thank you very much for watching, and thank you everyone for being a part of this. The question says, as parents, how do we manage our expectations when our children are not hitting the milestones we expect? Like the reading example you gave.
Yeah. So what you can do as a parent is, what opportunities can you, so first of all, when you say the milestone, we need to be very careful with ourselves. Who has set these milestones? Are these standard milestones, or are they milestones that we have parents have projected? Right? They're different children and they all grow differently. And so we need to understand the fact that children are different. So it's almost like understanding the variability that exists within each child and their cognitive abilities. Every child has different cognitive abilities. And so we need to understand that. We need to avoid, and that's why I said, is it a standard milestone, or is it the ones that we have set? If we have set those milestones, reality is that they may be coming from somebody's child that we have seen, what we have in our heads, and what has happened is that we have put in a pressure that need not exist for that child. Because again, we haven't understood the fact that they're variables that need to be addressed. So that is something that we need to be looking at. So again, it sort of trickles down to what we talked about at the beginning, Melu, about setting the right expectation, right? And then providing the support that child needs at that particular point in time to overcome the hurdle where they are and then push forward. I remember one of my, I think it was one of your teachers, actually, Salari. There was a day that we're having a conversation. He was like, when he was in secondary school, I think it's junior secondary school, he failed all the way up to junior secondary school. You know, and then one day, it's almost like he just woke up and he was like, is this me? Right? And that, it's almost like the switch just clicked. And there's some children like that. It just switched, it just clicked. You just wonder, is this the same child? It doesn't mean that that child is worse than their other peers. Developmentally, they're playing, they're just on their own pace. And eventually, when it switches, it does switch, right? So we need to be very careful about what we have put in place. Having said that, the second part, like you said, the reading example, there are many different, there's a lot of noise from your background, Melu. I don't know why. There are many things that we need to.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, thanks. So what are ways that we can do it? And I don't want to go too far because I can see that we're running out of time. There are things that are called low-hanging fruits. Low-hanging fruits are setting performance indicators, and I say setting them, so SETING, setting performance indicators for different levels for the child. What you have done is that you have given the child the ability to celebrate small wins, and you as the parent are celebrating those small wins as well. Once you celebrate a win, it's like what we said, right? Every child has something that they're good at, even if it is to sit down and to listen, even if it is to run around on the playground. There's something that they're good at. Recognize that thing that they're good at, celebrate it, and let that become the stepping stone, right? Almost like the bouncing factor to take that child to the places where they want to go. We also should not be sparse with, provide the support that the child needs when they need it, how they need it, not the way that we're going to give it. We need to be able to rein in our emotions as parents. Don't get unnecessarily angry. Don't also get unnecessarily vague. If there's something in particular this child needs to be working on, let the child know that. Don't tell them, figure it out now. Can you not think it? Can you not imagine it? They cannot. If they could, they would have done it in the first.
Mm-hmm.
So be very clear about,
Mm-hmm.
very
They're also
particular.
human beings.
Exactly. That's the way she said it. We're also human beings. Be very particular about your feedback and always think about the long term. If you have damaged this child's self-esteem today because of 1 plus 1, how about tomorrow when they need to do 1,000 times 1 million? Do you think they would have the self-esteem because of 1 plus 1 to manage that? Likely not. Right. So let us always just think about that. And it's not easy. I know as a parent, it's not easy because we have the belief system, and that is the belief, the conditioning that we've had as well as parents. We've been conditioned to believe that we need to be hard on our children so that they can achieve the best they can be in life. But that's not the reality. Is there tough love? Are there times where you can be hard on the children? Absolutely. But it should not be the norm. It should not be the way it happens all the time. Otherwise, you've lost that child because they would always expect that to happen and they will be prepared mentally for it. So whatever else that you're doing, it's like it doesn't sink in. So you have to mentally
Mm-hmm.
begin to train that child and retrain that child again and cutting out those faulty belief systems that you have embedded in that child. That way, they are more open to you and you notice they begin to flourish. If the children have a problem emotionally, it can never cognitively, it's very difficult for the cognitive to be
There is a
great.
very delicate matter. And then
Exactly.
sometimes, like you said, being like if tough love was the norm now, they will be expecting that every time, and that's what they're going to do when they grow up. That's what they're going to do to their peers, to their
Exactly.
children, to everyone around them, just reflecting what they have been
Yeah.
going through as well.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that.
Okay.
Um, I'm going to say something that's very so children mostly. Let's not limit it to like little kids, also teenagers because they also go through this. So even me as a teenager, I know I spend a lot of time on social media, especially TikTok. But it can have its positive effect, it can have its negative effects. So sometimes you get to learn new things, but other times you might be seeing people like how we talked about before, like how social media is like fake and like so many people just do things that's not actually them there. So
Yeah.
social media is actually a very crucial factor or cause of some of these mental health issues and reducing confidence, because I'm sure we've heard many stories of people who unfortunately took their own lives because of things that have happened online, or maybe cyberbullying. Maybe they weren't who they weren't good enough in per se. So how do you feel, what advice do you have for parents on helping their children not to be able to navigate these challenges? Yes.
So I mean, what you feed yourself is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
Whether food for your physical being, what you see, which is of course goes into your mental and psychological being. So it always is very important what you feed yourself. Now, what can parents do? I am not the advocate that says shut down all social media, shut down all digital media. That's not me,
Mm-hmm.
because if they don't do it at home, you're not always with the child, right? You would
Mm-hmm.
always, that child can go to their friend's house. They can even do some of these things in incognito mode, and you don't know what it is that they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. You come, you never see it because they close it. So what we really need to begin to think about is say to ourselves, what are the value systems my children should have? When you have the right value systems and you pass across that value system to your children, regardless where those children are, those values would speak. Social media has its bad points. It also has its good points, like you've just rightly mentioned. Helping the child understand things they shouldn't watch, things they shouldn't see, and them developing that, um it's almost like that mental,
Mentality or idea.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
switch it off is something that they're going to have to go through by themselves, but we need to give them the values to help them to switch it off. Help them understand. Before we got phones for my children, we had those conversations with them. And by 10, my children have phones, right? But we had those conversations, helping them understand the fact that, okay, this thing might seem like this, but it's really not like that. So we help them understand the whole pseudo reality that happens on social media, the whole four personalities that people bring out on social media, so that they understand that they're not real. So it's not everything that you hear that is true. It's not everything that you see That is true. And so helping children understand that as parents, and then parents themselves becoming digitally minded. I needed to go and understand what happens on TikTok. I needed to understand what happens on Instagram or what happens on Snapchat. Yes, yes, yes. On Wattpad, some of these things that children, take in.
Can be very addictive.
Very addictive. But I needed to go and learn all of those things such that I could parent with purpose. Otherwise, I'm parenting from a totally different angle, and my children
Mindlessly.
in another totally different angle. And it doesn't support the child in any way. Right? So, except I want my parents to have moms and dads in the digital world, and I'm only their mom and dad in the real world. In real life, IRL, isn't it?
IRL.
IRL, exactly. Except that's what I want. Then that's how I would ignore what is happening in the digital world. And that's not what I wanted. I don't want them to have uncles and aunties that don't, but are saying things that
Mhm.
are a lie to them, not understanding the impact. I had to take on that responsibility. As a parent, you need to know exactly what your child is doing. You might not know it all, but you need to know what is happening in that space. You need to have the right value systems. You need to give the children the right value systems. You need to be the support system. Otherwise, they will disappear into the digital world and you would lose your children. And that's not something you want. Having said that, there's something I want to mention here. There's a rising thought that is going on about something called digital dementia. And what digital dementia is, you know what dementia is, right? Dementia is when people begin
Yes.
to forget, yes, they lose memory. So there's something called digital dementia. And what is happening is because we're spending a lot of time on the digital things.
Mm-hmm.
What
This
is
our
happening
world.
in the digital world? Thank you. What is happening is that it is beginning to affect the parts of our brain that are not digital. So the digital part of our brain is increasing in its complexity and overshadowing other areas of our brain. Let me give you an example. I find it very difficult to read a paperback book these days because I'm usually reading stuff on my device,
On
right? So
screens.
what is happening, and I mean, we can all go and read about it, is that children are beginning to experience levels of digital dementia, right? Where things that they should do that are not digitally inclined, the brain is forgetting how to do those things. So having a great mix and helping your children understand that and how to manage the digital world and mix that up with, using their hands, using their knees, using their whatever is
Mhm.
really important, right? It's really important. We need to be able to combine these two. Otherwise, yeah, somebody can say, but that means the whole world is experiencing the same digital dementia, but does it make it right? Okay,
No.
having said that doesn't mean that you should shut down the entire devices your children are using. No, please don't. But let's find a really nice
A
balance,
balance.
yes, so that things can progress the way they should. All right, over to you, Nelly.
Thank
Gosh,
you very much.
yes.
I actually didn't even know like that was a thing, and it happens to me like in the weirdest ways. Like I'll be thinking I'm just being goofy because sometimes I spend so much time on my laptop, and then let's say I have a sheet of paper or something, and I want to probably look at a word or something like that, and then my mouse is beside me. Instead of actually using my hand to pinpoint the word, I'll start using the mouse to control like what's on the paper, and I'll not be like, what am I even doing?
Why
Like
am I
it's
doing
just
that?
sometimes it doesn't even make sense. So before I ask my last question, I want to acknowledge what someone here said. I see from Chisom, you can control what you say, but you can't control how people react to what you say. So this is even in your the rights in the constitution. You have the right to speech, but you have right freedom of speech, but you don't have right freedom after speech. So
Yeah.
sometimes people say something, they don't know what effects what they say. Thank you.
Oh my God,
Some people
Nelly.
say something and they don't know the effects of what they say. So then when someone else retaliates in a certain way or something, they now start getting, oh, like start playing the victims, they're so offended. And it's like sometimes it may be the fault, like maybe the way the person retaliated, or maybe the aftermath of what happened. But other times it actually people need to be really careful of what they say because what happens after that is definitely their fault. Like cars park that owners risk, like is
God.
whatever
Mhm.
happens is because of them, exactly. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. So cool.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Fabulous.
So we talked about a lot today.
Yeah.
We talked about digital dementia. We talked about what the role that parents can play, the roles that schools can play, the roles that you yourself can play to when it comes to like social media. You like you said, your daughter has her own schedule, so you be determined, you be disciplined, you know what you want in your life, so you
Mhm.
know what to avoid and what to focus on.
Yeah.
So, do you have any resources, like let's say any books or tools that parents
Mm.
and caregivers can use to further their knowledge and their skills in nurturing confidence and self-esteem?
I mean, to be honest, the internet is a treasure trove, you know. But I really do believe that. So there are books, and I mean, I can share that with you, and you can post it later. But when you think about the fact that every child is so absolutely different, we really, as parents, really just need to say, what does my child need, or what do my children need, and then go and find what it is that they need for them. That very activity of finding what they need based on who they are, I think that's the greatest gift we as parents can give to our children.
Yes, that was very concise, was deep, hit really well. So, thank you very much. This was a very fun, interactive,
Yeah.
educative, very amazing session. Thank you to all the
Thank
viewers and those who were asking questions, contributing. I appreciate this very, very much. I had a great time with you, Ms. Kiki. Thank
Same here.
you.
I did. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed myself. All right. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.